You're watching The Breakfast Club. In fact, if you've not been up all morning, then that seriously means that you've missed out a moment in history. World has been watching the return of the two astronauts. They've been up there for 9 months when they were destined to actually be there for just 8 days. They are back home safe and sound, and this is the story. This is an event that makes up smiles and makes up lives.
Why is this historic? We're going to be taking a look at right here on The Breakfast Club. Now, Sunita, Williams' name is right up there in terms of the astronauts who've cumulatively spent the most time in space. That and other really cool facts. We'll have a panel of experts, explorers joining us right here on the show, telling us the scientific but also the biological. What happens when your body's up there in space for that long? All of that and more. First, let's get a little deeper into it.
All right, so let's decode what exactly happened. There were smiles, there were waves, and a big thumbs up. It can't get better than that, really, and that's the image that's going to leave us, really smiling throughout the day, if not weeks, for me, definitely. Astronauts Sunita, William, and Butch Willmore, after an unexpected 9-month stay aboard the International Space Station, safely have returned to Earth. We are saying safe with a word of caution, remember, at this point, because we don't have a detailed update on their health. And from this point onwards, for about 45 days or so, they will be in isolation and will be looked up for any kind of medical, things that might have emerged while they were in space. So we have our fingers crossed for that. But so far, look at them smiling and almost, sitting back as they're taking away. So looks all is good for now. The SpaceX Dragon spacecraft carrying Williams and Wilmore, the American astronaut Nick Hague and the Russian cosmonaut Gorbunov made a spectacular re-entry before deploying parachutes for a smooth splashdown off the coast of Florida. This was at 3:25 a.m. All of us were up, all of us were watching.
Right, and it's all taking place. We're bringing you the moment-by-moment updates, but let's tell you what's taken place since they've landed. So, NASA officials confirmed their safe recovery shortly after they actually touched down, and they praised the astronauts' resilience, their adaptability through this very extended mission, because remember, it was just supposed to be 8 days long. The White House has shared a message celebrating the successful mission with the post "Promises made, promises kept," while SpaceX founder Elon Musk, because remember, they came back down on a SpaceX Dragon capsule. So SpaceX founder Elon Musk has also congratulated the entire team involved. Musk tweeted out congratulations to SpaceX and to NASA teams for another safe astronaut return. Thank you to the POTUS for prioritizing this mission. So all of those beautiful missions, messages coming in right now, messages coming in from Indian leaders too. But let's very quickly take you through defining images. So the moments that are going to be staying with us. First up, that is the visual. The journey back home. So this visual that you're looking at, this started yesterday itself. 8 a.m. in the morning, we told you that the hatch was being closed on the capsule. And after that, what we also told you was that the entire capsule was going to be undocking. So remember, they were on the International Space Station. The undocking took place, and this capsule with 4 astronauts, Sunita, Butch Williams, 1 NASA astronaut additionally, and 1 Russian cosmonaut. 4 people all traveled back home, and you can see that visual right there.
Yeah, let's move on to the next one. So that was part 1 of the journey. This is what got everybody really excited. This was the historic splashdown. Now, what you see over there as like this big halo around is actually a lot of energy, a lot of heat that is required to enter back into the Earth's surface. And that's what's got everybody talking that, oh, all is going well. It's also around the same time when they lost a bit of connection. So everybody was a little nervous about what's going to happen next. But this is when, from Earth, we started seeing the first glimpses of our astronauts actually back in that capsule. Let's move on to the next one.
Right. So this is the capsule, because remember, it fell onto the Florida coast, the waters there. And you must know, Florida, that entire area, the temperature, the weather, it's all very tempestuous. In fact, they actually moved up the date by 1 day because they were so worried about the Florida weather. This capsule, as you can see, slowly you can see the parachute being deployed over there on the sky. So it hasn't yet fallen into the water in those visuals.
And if you could hear the live feed, which is all available online, even on CNN News 18, you can go up there and watch and rewatch it if you haven't already. I loved how applause went up when one parachute pop and then the other one and then the other one.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, all of them are working. They're going to land safely. So that was the historic splashdown. Let's take you to the next one. And this is when the capsule actually hauled onto the ship. So what happens is the parachute landed, it got them to float on the waters, and then some speedboats went in to sort of rescue them and bring them back. So these are the images when you see the capsule actually bend over, and the next one is when they actually come right out. Those are the first time and the first images really that you see of the astronauts as they experience gravity after 9 long months, at least for Sunny and for Butch. So both of them also came out right after that. So you see that undocking happen. It's a bit of an angle that they put it into, and then they just walked out. Not really walked out. They were actually they slid out. They slid out. Yeah.
All right, let's go very quickly to that next visual then. Okay, that's the hatch of the capsule being opened up, the moment of reality over there as the astronauts are about to emerge. The entire NASA medical team is gathered over there.
Yeah.
As Sonal was saying, they're actually going to help. They're going to hold each of the astronauts because remember, gravity is something that they haven't been around in 9 months. So walking has possibly become harder. There's possibly been muscle loss. Their bones have been affected. They exercise to keep that off. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, next.
So that's the hatch being open, and then, you know, this one just deserves you to watch. That's Butch. He comes in and he's doing very well. He's just been floating around for all this while and he's done very well. He comes, he almost stands with some support over there, sits down, waves in, gives a thumbs up that all is well. You'll see the others also come right after that, and you'll see Sunita Williams as well. And I'll wait for you guys to sort of go in on that zoom shot for you to see what happens next. And then they're taken, of course, on a stretcher.
There's the wave that you were talking about.
And then they come on the stretcher.
Okay.
Okay, that's my girl. That's the moment I was talking about. My God, I think this smile, Toya, is what, as somebody who's not, rocket science is a word we use very loosely. But if there's something that we take away from this entire episode, it's the spirit with which these astronauts have really kept their cool and calm and their spirits high, telling everybody it's fine. You know, we are okay, and look how lovely it was to actually see them back. And she gave her $1 million smile over there. Lovely attitude this woman has got. Waved hard, gave a big thumbs up.
Yeah.
Gave a big thumbs up, and then you have the paramedics actually, and she gives that big muscle that we're okay, we're fine.
She actually in one of her interviews said, space is my happy place.
Yeah.
And they asked her how you're spending your time. She's been writing a journal. She knows that once she comes back to Earth, she can give that journal to people to read what it's like to be stuck in Earth. So she's actually been writing a journal every few days with exactly what's happening to her body for that input. Now let's take you to something a little bit more deep. Sunita Williams returns to Earth, and obviously this marks a milestone in NASA's space exploration program. CNN brought you all of the highlights over the last few hours. Take a look, and then we'll have some experts on to break it all down for us.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
A harrowing finish to the end of a long journey. Parachutes deployed, slowing the capsule barreling towards Earth. The Crew 9 astronauts landed off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
And SpaceX Freedom, splashdown.
NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov rode alongside Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams, finally back to Earth, splashing down Tuesday evening after Butch and Sunny spent more than 285 days aboard the International Space Station. The Boeing Starliner they rode up to space in was deemed unfit for them to return on due to helium leaks and propulsion issues. The pair was able to hitch a ride back home aboard a SpaceX Dragon capsule.
We see main chutes cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Sunny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
After their splashdown, recovery vessels zoomed up to the Crew Dragon, standing at the ready after the capsule plunged back into the atmosphere. SpaceX recovery ship named Megan used a large rig to haul the capsule, carrying the astronauts out of the water. Afterwards, the crew was slated to be flown to Ellington Field and finally taken here to nearby Johnson Space Center to eventually be reunited with their families.
The big issue is these two astronauts missed their families.
The astronauts were originally slated to be away from home for an 8-day mission, but had their timeline extended to 9 months. Back here on Earth, their capsule was greeted by dolphins. At the Johnson Space Center, I'm Lee Waldman.
All right, so that was a quick recap for everybody who sort of missed up all the excitement that was happening overnight for us here in India. But let's quickly open that up and get all those fascinating details. I'm sure all of you have questions. We have questions as well to our panel of experts. Joining us this morning, somebody who hasn't slept all night, Shrishti, our colleague, is here from News 18. She's going to break it down for us. She's been tracking the entire movement of what happened with the Starliner for a while now. Also with us is Dr. S.M. Ahmed. He's a member of the Chandrayaan mission, ISRO. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Rishabh Kumar, he's a senior consultant and assistant professor, Department of Radiation Oncology at Amrita School of Medical Science. He's with us, so he is going to tell us all the details of what we don't know so far. The mission is now successful, it's over, but the health of the astronauts is a major concern, and he's here to sort of decode that for us a little bit. And Dr. Ajay Lele is with us, Deputy DG, Manohar Parikar, IDSA. Good morning, gentlemen, and Shrishti. Doctor, if I can come to you first, Dr. Rishabh, just to sort of get all those questions. We heard the NASA press conference. They've been, as expected, very sort of vague about saying all is fine. They haven't got into the details, perhaps understandably because they haven't got their hands on the basic checks and parameters of the astronauts. But in a space like this, when I say space like this, when the spectrum of health issues can go from things that you can actually recoup, like muscle loss, other things, etc., to stuff that is irreversible, like radiation damage. What, according to you, are major concerns at the moment?
So, first of all, good morning to all, and my heartiest congratulations to NASA and the SpaceX team for the successful return of Sunny Williams, Sunita Williams, and Butch Willmore. So, coming to your question, there are health issues associated with space travel, and that is NASA is quite experienced in dealing with it. But for such a long, unplanned journey, where close to 9 months they are they are in lower Earth orbit, there are certain health issues which are associated with this kind of space travel. Starting with the effects of microgravity, or staying in or staying in a place where the gravity is very low. It affects your health in terms of your cardiovascular health, your heart, your muscles and bones. All of them grow weak. And there is a lot of radiation which you are experiencing in space. So as normal human beings, so the amount of radiation that the astronauts would have witnessed is about 10 whole body CT scans in a year. So that 10 whole body CT scans would cause some kind of radiation damage in terms of their skin, their immune system, and maybe slightly increased risk. Yeah, DNA damage, and all these DNA damages, they accumulate, and there is a slightly higher risk of having some cancers, which is higher than the general population. Yeah.
So I just want to share with our audiences, NASA aims to limit exactly that. So with every astronaut, they try to limit the lifetime cancer risk to within 3%. So they're very particular about which astronaut they're sending, how many times up and for how long. And then that rehabilitation mission is actually 45 days long. If we could also get you, Doctor, to speak on what's going to happen with a few areas. Firstly, there's the bone density, there is the muscles. We know that they've been exercising for 2 hours every single day to keep their muscle strength, but we know that they're weaker, standing will be hard. So talk to that point, and also talk to what cosmic radiation is, Doctor, because that's a fear. That exposure has been a fear. Just walk us through that. Okay, so because all these health problems are well documented, all the astronauts, they have these measures of staying healthy by they regularly check their health with blood tests. They have an ultrasound machine on board. They have assisted exercise treadmill devices that they can use. I mean, in one of the space missions, one of the astronauts had a thrombus in the jugular vein, which was diagnosed using ultrasound, and all that was corrected by the doctors back home. So they exercise a lot. Sunita Williams ran almost the Boston Marathon, a full marathon in 4 hours. That's how she exercises and stays fit. But what happens is when you don't have gravity, you don't have the pressure which acts on your bones and muscles. Normally, our heart works against gravity to push blood to your brain. Without gravity, the muscles become weak, and
as soon as you get home. So it's basically like, bones are getting weak. So as a grandmother would lose the bone density over 10-year period, Sunita Williams would have lost that same bone density in the 6 months period. So now she will be on supplements. She was already on supplements, and we talk about radiation a lot, but radiation is what builds your vitamin D and your bone strength. It is the sunlight which is coming from the ray, from the sun, and the energy from the sun that builds vitamin D in your body. So she was devoid of that, and the bone density is less, and she would have an effect on that. Now,
But
that
clotting
would
as
be
well,
built up
Dr.
slowly.
Rishabh? Clotting is different. Clotting is as well?
So what happens with clotting? That there is redistribution of blood. There's no gravity. Normally, your blood pools down in your legs. Without
Now it
gravity,
goes
the blood pools down.
That's why the
So
heads
just
are
imagining-
bulging also a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. So just imagine that if I would to turn you upside down and your blood was coming all the way to your head, so your veins would be engorged. The blood flow is reduced to your jugular. So stasis of blood promotes clotting. So this kind of thrombus formation
Kidney stones
happens.
also, for that reason, I
Yeah,
believe, because the
yeah.
blood is going up to your head, there's a
Yeah,
larger chance of...
Absolutely. So coming to the radiation part of it, so we need to be, we need to be worried about radiation, but we need to be also, we should understand that we are doing as radiation experts, and as in NASA we have got each and every measure to protect against radiation. Talking about dose limit set by NASA, so a 55-year-old female has a dose limit of about 4,000 millisieverts in her career, which she can receive. And in this space mission, Sunita Williams would have received somewhere around 150 to 160 millisieverts.
Wow.
So which is still so we still have a huge gap to reach that 5,000 or 4,000 millisievert for a 55-year-old female. Now coming to the radiation, the cosmic radiation that you mentioned. So essentially the radiation that affects any astronaut, and I think my physics colleagues from ISRO would answer that better. But there is cosmic radiation from the galactic cosmic rays coming from the supernovas. There is radiation which comes from the solar flare, the SEPs, and then there is the trapped radiation in the Van Allen belt. So these three radiations actually affect the astronauts in the lower Earth orbit, which is around 400 kilometers. So what the two radiations that contribute maximum to the person's health is actually the trapped radiation through the Van Allen belt and the cosmic background radiation, which is coming through high energy particles. So all of this universe was created from small particles, protons, right?
Yeah.
So we are built of protons. The mass is from protons. We are built of energy. We are energy. And the universe has energy, and it is the interaction of energy with energy that causes that damage, right? So the helium particles, the charged particles, they are moving across space at a very high speed, and that releases a lot of energy. And that kind of energy reaches in space. And in Earth, we have this shield, this magnetic shield that prevents this galactic cosmic rays coming directly, and it reduces its intensity by deflecting the charged particles. Because they have weight, it gets deflected. Now, this kind of is not there in that Van Allen belt, which is that anomaly in that magnetic field that we have, and which is above the coast of South America. So whenever the ISS, it crosses around 16 times a year. So during that time, they get exposed through that anomaly, and they get radiation there. And they're also getting radiation from the trapped radiation and the galactic cosmic rays. We should also remember that they get radiation from the solar flares, and that can be
But
timed.
Dr. Rishabh, just if I could sort of dumb it down a little bit for our viewers. So of course you're very passionate about the whole thing, and there is so much to know for all of us from this. But what does this essentially lead to? Are we talking about irreversible damage from radiation?
So the damage with radiation has its short-term effects and long-term effects.
Okay.
The short-term effects are pretty much reversible, and the long-term effects, which include the probability of having cancer, is kind of irreversible, but it has its own dose limits, so that we reduce the probability. As you said, NASA wants to reduce the probability for the astronauts within 3%, and that's how we set dose limits. As a radiation worker, I have a dose limit of 20 millisieverts a year. as opposed to this career mission of the astronauts that they have a career limit of 4,000 millisieverts for their career lifetime. But I have about 20 millisieverts a year, and you have about 1 millisievert a year. So each of us is also exposed to cosmic radiation even at Earth. But the intensity and the dose rate is much higher up in lower Earth orbit, and that is what increases the chances of irreversible damage.
Okay, so Dr. Rishabh, that is beautifully illustrated. That is what happens to the body, and we'll keep coming back to you to understand a little bit more, because
so fascinating.
that's the ever fascinating part. We want to know the kind of tests that will be run on their bodies over the next 45 days. But we also have other experts with us right now, and they're going to take us through the physics, the complicated engineering behind all of this. Dr. Ajay Lele, he's a deputy DG at the Manohar Parikar IDSA. Doctor, if we could come to you to understand, can you break down for our audiences in almost simpler terms that we can understand why this has taken a whole year to do? Let me just tell our audiences that the Boeing Starliner that both Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore went up on, that was a maiden flight to test out its capabilities, a maiden crewed flight. But SpaceX sending up their capsule, that is what took a whole year. There were other astronauts that were sent up to replace these two astronauts. But still, were there other issues through this year that led to this? How do you view it?
I think one has to really look at it not from a political point of view, the way it has been put forward by Elon Musk and Trump. Because if you see the entire schedule of this mission, first thing first, as far as Boeing was concerned, they were supposed to get it back in 8 days, and that's a reality. Nobody can say anything about it. There were problems, the technical problems. There was a leak as far as Boeing was concerned, and NASA was very correct in their own assessment that yes, there is a possibility of accident, and nobody wants to enter into, means everybody would like to have a 0% possibility of accident when there are human missions. So NASA was very right not to undertake a mission to get them back with a Boeing. Luckily, the Boeing craft came back, the Starliner, without any incidents. So there was a possibility that they also could have got back, but nobody took a chance. Now, the second thing is that after that, around 8 missions of the towards the International Space Station had already happened. So these astronauts could have been brought back in any of those missions. But there was a very systematic planning which had happened. This particular mission which they have brought back is known as a Crew 9 mission.
Right.
What was launched was a Crew 10 mission where the 4 astronauts have gone there. So Crew 9 mission started in the month of September. In the month of September, the launch took place. And if you see, every spacecraft has got vacancies for 4 people to sit inside. This time also 4 people went to the International Space Station by Crew 10 mission, and 4 people have got back. But when the Crew 9 mission was sent, it was intentionally 2 seats were kept vacant over there. So only 2 astronauts through the Crew 9 mission had gone there. And the intention was that we will get these 2 astronauts back to the surface of the Earth.
Right.
These 2 astronauts are experienced astronauts. They have undertaken the space missions earlier. They were involved into various type of projects. So I'm sure NASA must have really worked out with them that if you're there, if you're going to be there for a longer period of time, is there going to be a value addition? Because these astronauts have spent tremendous amount of time
Actually,
earlier.
that's a question that's always bogged me, that what are they doing up in space? Like, what exactly are the different things that are really going on? And let me bring in Dr. S.M. Ahmad, member of the Chandrayaan mission from ISRO, who's been waiting very patiently. Good morning, sir. So lovely to have you. So lovely to have you this morning. And this is quite a moment in history, isn't it? And it is quite a moment in history for private players as well. India is already part of this very elite space club with our landings on the moon, with so many other endeavors that we've been taking. What do you think this mission speaks for projects and aspirations coming out of India now?
Yeah, so as Dr. Ajay Lele was mentioning, it is the capsule which is actually responsible for the whole fiasco, what we are in. Everything was all planned and everything, and then comes in this Boeing Starliner experiment, and then the capsule would not bring them back safely. So that is where we have learned a lesson, every other space scientist, that if I would not have that wonder capsule, then I would run into problem. In fact, the February return was there, and that was also turned into March because they were planning to have a new capsule which that was not ready. They sent the old capsule in which they have come back now. So coming back to the ISRO, the private players joining, I am being an ex-ISRO person, but work for a private entity, a startup, the so-called startup. So many lessons to learn, and we are building rockets. There are half a dozen guys who are actually building rockets. So I would urge them, maybe I would have guys to start up building that capsule, that wonder thing, which would take them and then bring them back on its own with all its gadgets and all.
I see.
Dr. Ahmed, can we actually get you to analyze? So let's just tell our audiences, not Tesla, sorry, but SpaceX. SpaceX is very unique because it actually reuses all of the equipment it uses to set off a spaceship into space. And can you just tell our audiences, can you speak to exactly that point? Why it is that what SpaceX has developed is so cost efficient? And Dr. Ahmed, I ask you this because ISRO is also known for its cost efficiency. It's known for achieving incredible things at costs that are limited. But I just want to understand how you balance that limited costs with not making something dangerous, like Boeing Starliner clearly letting down millions of people with, its failure. So what's that balance?
Okay, cost effectiveness, ISRO versus NASA. Right now, we are almost one tenth of what ISRO is doing. That is purely because of the way we make things, the frugal budget and those aspects.
Yeah.
However, what SpaceX has cracked in having the space accessibility very easy is to reusable first stage. So if you want to send any object into the space, let's say the low Earth orbit, 500 kilometers, you would have two parts. The first part would actually take you up, which is called stage 1. And then you would have stage 2, which would take you to the exact orbit, very close to the orbit. It could be right around the Earth, or it could be geosynchronous, close to geosynchronous transfer orbit, or it could actually take you to the Moon or to the Mars. So the stage 2, which would actually take you there, that is not reusable, even though that is also being tried out for being reusable. However, the first stage 1, which would amount to a huge amount of hardware and lot of sensors all around, that is being reused again and again and again, more than a dozen times in the case of recent stage 1 stages by the SpaceX. Even though ISRO has almost done that successfully, but not routinely, not repeatedly. So once ISRO also demonstrated the reusability of stage 1, our cost would go further down from 1/10 almost. That number, you can take it 1/8 or 1/12 like that. It would go down much slower. And right now, even with whatever cost effectiveness we at India are offering, let's say taking 1 kilogram to Moon or to planet Mars, we are very, very competitive as compared to NASA. Even today, without that reusability, routine usability of stage 1, which SpaceX has demonstrated.
Yeah.
But Doctor, where does Boeing stand in all of this? Is this because earlier we were talking about how this will be seen as a hit to Boeing? Even though Boeing came back safely, they weren't able to bring these two astronauts back at the allotted time.
Yeah. So the way it was happening, the fiasco started like this and ended up what we are in. But of course, the stories all ended. Everything is nice as we are seeing Sunita coming back. So the Soyuz capsule from Russia and the SpaceX Dragon capsule would be the ones which were standby. Anytime they could have gone and picked up the astronauts. The Ukraine fiasco happens. So with the Ukraine fiasco, and of course NASA, prior to the present administration coming in US, NASA was always trying for, apart from NASA walked out of the building the rockets. So even though they didn't want to put everything in SpaceX kitty, so they were trying with space launch systems of Boeing. So and also with Blue Origin. So the Boeing's trouble started. Not only they have something to catch up in building the rocket, the reusability rocket, but the present problem happened because of the capsule not having very proper thrusters to orient it back into the orbit and to bring it flash down somewhere, let's say Florida or wherever you want. And also
Dr.
the helium.
We'll just get a breakdown from you deeper into that in a second.
But we just have on the phone line with us the former ISRO chairman, Dr. S. Somnath. He is with us. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Can I first just start by understanding what does this moment in history mean for the world and then also for India? The fact that these astronauts first were stranded, showed absolute resilience and now have been able to come back, but thanks to private players?
It's as you said, it's a moment in history. Astronauts getting there for long duration. It has happened in the past also. But the difference here is that this time the astronauts went in one spacecraft up there to the International Space Station, came back in another spacecraft. And this happened to be sort of a rescue mission, though nobody will tell that it is a rescue thing, because it is quite normal for International Space Station to have people traveling up and down. But the history is primarily because of the first mission used to be the one with the proving mission for the Boeing Starliner, and then it failed to do the return mission with the crew, and another craft has to go and do that rescue or sort of thing. So that way it is very unique. And the second part of uniqueness is that for a short duration mission which was originally intended, prolonged for such a long duration, and that became a testing ground for astronauts like Sunita Williams to prove their mettle, to show that it's possible for human beings to endure such long duration missions, which gives us confidence for future generations of space travelers.
Sir, can we ask you, as someone who has headed ISRO, what were you tracking during these last 9 months? Because there are, as we were just saying, there are big players involved here. Apart from NASA, there's obviously SpaceX that's every single day proving its own might. And apart from that, you have Boeing that was trying to do, its own successful mission with this. They failed. How have you been tracking this? What have you been looking at?
For me, this is a sort of a competitive world in space now, because many players emerging, not just NASA as an agency alone, but they encouraged human spaceflight mission to be handled by private players. It's a very, very important thing to happen. And right now, the Crew Dragon being the only vehicle available in the private domain to do such missions. But they were encouraging Boeing also to come up with a Starliner, as well as SLS, which is the NASA's its own vehicle for future missions. So 3 of those vehicles were getting ready for that. Finally, this competition was so intense because it's a huge business opportunity as well as a scientific opportunity. So I was watching primarily the way it is taking shape. The Starliner was a different design. It's on architecture, but it was getting into technical issues and difficulties even in the first mission itself. And for bringing them back, I was hoping the Starliner will once again make an attempt of sort of thing to make sure that their place in history is not nullified. But then, of course, they couldn't because of possibly the regulatory issues or safety concerns. So the the Crew Dragon of the SpaceX had to take that role. So from my point of view, it gives me a certain observation how criticalities emerges in crew missions like this, and how a space vehicle needs to be proven very well with uncrewed missions prior to committing on human spaceflight missions. So for me, that is a lesson and observation.
Dr. Somnath, can I ask you one final question? And this is sort of a man versus machine question. In times like these, in moments like these, in situations like these, what do you think has a higher importance, the resilient human spirit or the irresistible machine and the ever-charging machine? What do you think plays a higher role in situations like these?
There are human beings up there in space. There are equally capable human beings down on Earth. I think the synchronized way of working between them only made this rescue possible or recovery possible. And it is not possible for the astronaut alone to do this mission. It is for great amount of planning and work that happened on the ground that made this bringing back possible. So I must salute all those who did the work in the ground as well to plan, execute, prepare this mission to happen. So it is one way a story of the human resilience for people who went up onto space as astronauts, but equally about that scientists, technicians, and engineers who built those beautiful crafts, who were able to bring crew safely back and forth. So I salute both of them. And machines are equally important. I think let us not look at machines as silly things, but they are so intelligent and capable piece of equipment that allows us to do these majestic missions. So human beings coupled with the machines can do wonders in the future also.
Beautifully said. So it's man and machine. S. Somnath, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking out the time early this morning and just bringing that knowledge to our audiences. Okay, for all of our guests.
Please stay on.
Yeah, Dr. S.M. Ahmed, Dr. Rishabh Kumar, we're going to come back to each of you and ask you a little bit more. Dr. Ajay Lele, we haven't yet broken down the engineering enough with you.
Yeah, and Shrishti has been patiently waiting.
Yes,
so quick break. We'll
do
be back
stay with
in a
us. We'll be
moment.
back in just a few minutes. Issues that had led to problems when this 9-month mission has been taking place, why it kept extending to 9 months, the different issues that took place, because there were weather-related issues around the Florida coast that prevented things from taking place more quickly. There was also a different set of issues, the technical issues that took place in the first place. Shrishti, all of this to say that obviously what NASA is trying to pull off tomorrow, all eyes are going to be on whether or not these two astronauts, obviously the entire world is praying they will land successfully. Shrishti, just tell our audiences, assuming everything goes off exactly as it's supposed to, what is the timeline? Just tell us. Starting from right now, 10 a.m., we know that the docking process is taking place as we speak, the undocking process rather. Now, what's going to take place? What are the next few steps until tomorrow morning?
Yes, Toya. So what's happening right now is the undocking of the spacecraft from the International Space Station. After that, after this crucial phase is over, NASA will wait for some more time to start the de-orbit burn, which is the time when the spacecraft starts preparing for re-entry re-entry on Earth. So that crucial phase will begin later this evening, and NASA is going to monitor the weather conditions of the Florida coast, because that is very crucial, because once the re-entry takes place, that usually takes around 3 to 4 hours, and once it gets a go-ahead from the ground station, only then the de-orbit burn, which is the last penultimate phase, will begin later this evening. And if all goes as planned and the weather conditions are favorable, then we hope that the astronauts will be safely landing on Earth off the coast of Florida around 3:30 to 4 o'clock tomorrow Indian Standard Time, and the ground teams will be alerted. So see, apart from the weather, it also depends upon how ready are the ground teams and at the sea, because to ensure the recovery happens as planned and on time. So these are the crucial phases, but as NASA has just announced that the undocking has happened seamlessly, which is a good news, that the astronauts are now soon going to begin their journey back home after 9 long months at the International Space Station.
Okay, Shrishti, one of the most interesting aspects of this story has obviously been what takes place in their bodies when they're in space, and what are the precautions that are going to take place once they land. We know immediately when they land, you're going to have NASA medical teams rushing towards them to run them through all kinds of checks. But just tell our audiences what happens when you're up in space for 9 months. One, for example, is that you forget that gravity is a thing. But just tell our audiences in a more systematic way exactly what takes place.
Definitely. So one point that we should not forget is that both Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are NASA veterans. They have flown into space twice before. So this is their third visit to the space. So they're well aware of the conditions there. The major challenge comes from the extended stay in microgravity, which is the weightlessness, because there's no gravity in space. So when you stay in such conditions for a very long period of time, then there are chances, or rather there are actually effects that you lose your muscle density. There's muscle atrophy. There are some changes in your body fluids, and that is why all these astronauts are really trained to perform exercises and keep their bodies fit at the International Space Station. So yes, that microgravity effects are definitely there. Second, scientists tell us that nominal space radiations are always present at the International Space Station, no matter what kind of precautions you take. So when any extra day in space renders you much more vulnerable to those radiations impact. So once the astronauts are back on Earth, they're usually quarantined for some period of time to ensure that their health parameters are okay, and ensure that the effects that they had when they were at the International Space Station. it's it's very difficult to really say what kind of impacts they actually experience, because space agencies around the world rarely share that data. That data is not available in the public domain, so we really do not know. But scientific studies show that some of the effects can really be recovered, but in the long term it does definitely have an impact. But again, like I'd like to again emphasize that both Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are veterans. They know how the conditions happen in space, and they really it's not a new experience for them. And NASA as well, over 270 astronauts have flown into International Space Station over the last 2 decades. So it's not a new exercise for them, but I think yes, the point of concern is that these 2 astronauts, they had gone to space for a duration of 8 days, ended up staying there for 9 months, so away from their families. So yes, now as we all are waiting for their safe return home. And we'll get to know a little more about once they land.
Shrishti, just stay with us. We'll just go over right now to Dinesh Bhai Rawal. He's joining us right now, and he is actually a cousin of Sunita Williams. He's joining us on the phone. Dinesh Bhai, आप हमें सुन सकते हैं अभी? आपको हमारी आवाज़ आ रही है? All right, we'll look to re-establish that connection. We do have a relative of Sunita Williams joining us right now. And we'll actually be bringing you multiple guests through the day today and tomorrow morning to bring us coverage around the story. Okay, we'll just go back to Shrishti for a second and ask her more. Shrishti, tell our audiences there's a lot of really... Welcome back. You're watching The Breakfast Club, and we are continuing to bring you wall-to-wall coverage as Sunita Williams has just a few hours ago successfully landed back on Earth. She, along with 3 other astronauts, the important one, of course, being Butch Wilmore, her and him have been trapped up in space for 9 months now. Let's go over very quickly now to everyone we have covering this. Let's go over first to Shrishti, though we have a panel of experts staying with us. Shrishti, you waited very patiently through that entire first part where we were discussing some of the technicalities in this entire story. But Shrishti, we haven't spoken yet about Sunita Williams herself. So she's someone who's a former Navy pilot. She's someone who joined NASA in the late 90s. And Shrishti, very interestingly, a young, interestingly and possibly horrifically, a young Sunita Williams, as she just started out with NASA, just a few years in, witnessed the Columbia disaster take place, because that took place in 2003. She had joined in 1998. Shrishti, just walk us through this woman's achievements, because Sunita Williams is no ordinary astronaut. She's right up there in a number of different records. Just tell us all about it.
Top 3, yeah?
Yeah. Walk us through it, please.
Definitely. We had Kalpana Chawla. She inspired so many girls in India, and now we have Sunita Williams successfully completing her space expedition and coming back to Earth. The 59-year-old Sunita Williams, she stayed there for 9 months, completed so many experiments. But what we'll remember her is, for her endurance and for the resilience that she has shown throughout this period. And she was excitedly performing all these experiments. There were so many visuals that NASA had shared. It's also important to note that Sunita Williams is among the topmost female astronauts globally who have, among the highest cumulative space hours where she has completed these experiments. She has conducted 3 space flights in this mission as well, and she is among the leading female astronauts who have, undertaking these arduous space expeditions.
Female astronauts or generally astronauts? All over gender.
Generally astronauts, yes. But in terms of female astronauts also, she's among the topmost, because I think
she's
the highest...
the second most in just women in NASA.
Yes, indeed. And in this mission also, she did all the work that all the astronauts do, and definitely is a very inspiring case. And in case of Sunita Williams, the connection that she shares with India is what people here really look up to. And also importantly, it's a very difficult journey in space at the International Space Station. What scientists tell us that it requires you to be really fit, the kind of endurance it requires, and Sunita Williams definitely showcased that. And she was also, I think, very emotional also while bidding goodbye to the International Space Station. We saw NASA visuals of both Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams, this was their third space flight aboard the International Space Station, and most likely it was their last. So this is the last that they were at the International Space Station, and as much as they were missing Earth and their family here, but I'm sure they have a lot of memories now to cherish from the
You're
space.
so right about that, because it did feel like that they're going to miss their time up there. And this word, I was looking at some Reddit post last evening where they said that people are saying that how they've been stranded in space. But when you look at the two of them, it doesn't look or sound like stranded at all. It's not like they're trapped there and they need rescued, which is all true in one way, but they looked so happy about it. And can I just take a moment to sort of understand the psychological impact of this all and bring in Dr. Rishabh as well? Dr. Rishabh, not easy, right? If anybody has been nerding on these videos like I've been for the past couple of days and watching them swim all over space and fly all over, wash their hair, brush their teeth, look at how the toilets in space are like, etc. If you're claustrophobic, trust me, don't watch these visuals. It'll put you in a bit of a dizzy. But it takes a different kind of mental strength to go through this, not knowing when it will end.
Absolutely. And you need nerves of steel and extreme mental strength to actually be in space and be in this weightless new normal for you in space. And these astronauts, they go through a battery of cognitive tests. They do a lot of tests that are, checking their mental health. And one of the major health issues, other than the cardiovascular health issues and bone health that we were talking about, is actually the mental health and the mental functioning that will get affected as a part of being stranded alone there and being affected with some kind of radiation affecting the brain and more importantly, the kind of isolation that you have with your family and friends. That really affects you mentally.
Can we ask Dr. S.M. Ahmed, can you speak a little to what it's like to construct that space for the astronauts on ISS? So a space that will keep them entertained, but a space that will keep them healthy. We know that, they'll play games with each other. That's how they stay
have
active.
Christmas parties like they did.
Yeah, but they also exercise. We know there's an exercise station that's been set up, and astronauts have been using that spot on ISS for years. So it's not anything that is exclusive to this mission. But Dr. S.M. Ahmed, what goes into creating the perfect space for astronauts on the ISS, a place that will keep them psychologically safe when they're out there in space?
Yeah, let me start by saying that the other aspects, such as we call on Earth called extracurricular activities, I would not like to touch upon them, and they are very much needed, as the other panelists were saying, to keep your mental health in good shape.
Yeah.
However, I like to touch upon a couple of the scientific aspects, which Dr. Ajay Lele will also agree with me, is that they have extremely well planned and extremely cutting edge experiments, at least 3 to 4 dozen of them, 30 to 40 of them, which were going on. So people like Sunita Williams, it's their job to make sure that the data is coming very, very properly. Starting from looking at the Earth, where we have the best cameras possible placed there, which are looking in hyperspectral imagery cameras and all. Biotechnology experiments where the cell signaling and all is tested out, and microgravity based 3D printing. So there are plethora of experiments which requires, if I want to be, let's say right now I'm designing a hyperspectral camera. I have spent 30 years to have that camera. Here is Sunita Williams, who is actually replacing S.M. Ahmed and trying to make sure that all the data is coming very properly. It is in a good shape, and I have given her a set of test things which she would look into and make sure that it's going on well. That's much simpler way to test a camera, rather than trying to make sure that all the biological experiments and the other high-tech instruments going on. Right. Apart from the very huge thing called the routine maintenance, which an electrician would do, an air condition mechanic would do, and any other thing would do, is the task of these people. So keeping their health and their mental thing is a separate thing. Apart from that, the experiments themselves are very, very right on top of the technology, and that's what these people accomplish and do it very well. And I salute them.
Yeah, Absolutely. Dr. Ajay, can I also sort of bring you in now on takeaways from what we have from a moment in history like this? A lot of chatter also online about what this means for private players in space, space tourism. Last year, the big word coming out of that was space tourism. Do you think this has sort of propelled us further in that direction? Young kids watching this across the globe today would be aspiring now?
I think there are 2-3 important things out of this. One is that as far as young kids are concerned, STEM is the buzzword nowadays, where everybody wants to invest the coming generation into engineering and other related aspects. And in this era of AI, definitely that is the most important thing. And it's definitely going to motivate the younger generation, not only to look at rocket science, but other sciences also, because there was a lot of a talk about the biotechnologies and other medical related issues also along with this mission. Otherwise, it's only rocket sciences get discussed, but this mission you had a tinge of other sciences also getting discussed, and that's definitely a good thing. The most important aspect to my mind of this mission is that this is for the first time something like this has happened, and both the astronauts have proved that human endurance is there to sustain out over there. So it's a lessons for the future astronauts also, because as an astronaut, when you are training yourself, you have got an example in front of you that even if anything goes amiss out into the space, number one, the people working on the earth are not going to keep you hanging out over there. People will try their level best to get you back. And second thing is that you will be able to, if you are mentally fit, you will be able to sustain out over there for many, many more days than what has been planned. So that is the most important lesson, not only for the normal human beings, but particularly for the future astronauts or people who are getting trained out over here. Then there are various other things for the future missions also. It's a very coincidence, one can say, that we have seen the undocking, and just a few days back, ISRO's satellite system, which was there out into the space, we also successfully completed the undocking experiment. So the docking and undocking, which we all have realized with the ISRO's experiments which had happened during last 2 to 3 days, is what is required for the International Space Station. So now people will understand that why ISRO was investing into docking and undocking experiments, because this is what is going to be required ultimately when we will have our own Bharatiya Antariksh Station. So there are a lot of learnings out of it, particularly a lot of motivational things out of it. Otherwise, if you talk to NASA scientists, for them, it was just one of the routine missions, which is what they will say.
Dr. Lele, Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Kumar, thank you for joining us. I love that at so many points we've touched on the spiritual, just how much this means for humanity. This is a story of human perseverance more than anything else.
So man versus machine, I
but
guess.
Man and machine.
Man and machine, hand in hand. So far, at least, you don't know what AI will do to all of us any which way. Thank you all for joining us.
Yes,
thank you.
I love that. Woman and man. There is Butch Wilmore. We keep not talking about him, but yes, woman and man and machine. Humanity. Thank you so much for joining all of us right here.
On that note, we are going to end the program today. We every day end with a visual that will make you smile, but today it's just got to be this one. Enjoy it. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
We're just heading into a break.
Splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
A harrowing finish to the end of a long journey. Parachutes deployed, slowing the capsule barreling towards Earth. The Crew 9 astronauts landed off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
And SpaceX Freedom, splashdown.
NASA astronaut Hague and Russian cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov rode alongside Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams, finally back to Earth, splashing down Tuesday evening after Butch and Sunny spent more than 285 days aboard the International Space Station. The Boeing Starliner they rode up to space in was deemed unfit for them to return on due to helium leaks and propulsion issues. The pair was able to hitch a ride back home aboard a SpaceX Dragon capsule.
We see main chutes cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Sunny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
After their splashdown, recovery vessels zoomed up to the Crew Dragon, standing at the ready after the capsule plunged back into the atmosphere. SpaceX recovery ship named Megan used a large rig to haul the capsule carrying the astronauts out of the water. Afterwards, the crew was slated to be flown to Ellington Field and finally taken here to nearby Johnson Space Center to eventually be reunited with their families.
The big issue is these two astronauts missed their families.
The astronauts were originally slated to be away from home for an 8-day mission, but had their timeline extended to 9 months. Back here on Earth, their capsule was greeted by dolphins. At the Johnson Space Center, I'm Lee Waldman.
For the recovery teams themselves, we started the day taking a series of helicopters out to the vessel. Oh yeah, Sandra, this view is absolutely unbeatable. So just to kind of finish off what I was saying is once that side hatch of the spacecraft is open, that crew will be assisted out of the capsule one by one.
The distance there between, dolphin cam back again. we can see.
So once securely on.
Welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks.
And there you have it. The side hatch is open for the first time since September.
Yeah.
And there we do see Crew 9, some happy waves, smiles all around back on Earth.
Oh, looks like we're getting our next crew member here. That is none other than Sunny Williams. Big smile, big waves. She, like her other crew members, now will be assisted onto the mobility aid.
Onto the ship, we have a very special treat,
which is what this team is preparing for now. As for the recovery teams themselves, we started the day taking a series of helicopters out to the vessel. Oh yeah, Sandra, this view is absolutely unbeatable. So just to kind of finish off what I was saying is once that side hatch of the spacecraft is open, that crew will be assisted out of the capsule one by one.
The distance there between, dolphin cam back again. we can see.
So once securely on.
Welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks.
And there you have it. The side hatch is open for the first time since September.
Yeah.
And there we do see Crew 9, some happy waves, smiles all around back on Earth.
Oh, looks like we're getting our next crew member here. That is none other than Sunny Williams. Big smile, big waves. She, like her other crew members, now will be assisted onto the mobility aid.
There we have it, some waves, some thumbs up, and some smiles. We're getting some views of him now as he egresses or exits the spacecraft.
Once again, some elation and cheers there from Butch Wilmore. We can see folks on board clapping as our first crew member.
And that is NASA astronaut Nick Hague, commander of Crew 9, now out of Crew Dragon Freedom. Some smiles, thumbs up, and a wave. Can't get any better than that.
Well, just like
and splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
A harrowing finish to the end of a long journey. Parachutes deployed, slowing the capsule barreling towards Earth. The Crew 9 astronauts landed off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
And SpaceX Freedom, splashdown.
NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov rode alongside Butch, Wilmore, and Sunny Williams, finally back to Earth, splashing down Tuesday evening after Butch and Sunny spent more than 285 days aboard the International Space Station. The Boeing Starliner they rode up to space in was deemed unfit for them to return on due to helium leaks and propulsion issues. The pair was able to hitch a ride back home aboard a SpaceX Dragon capsule.
We see main chutes cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Sunny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
After their splashdown, recovery vessels zoomed up to the Crew Dragon, standing at the ready after the capsule plunged back into the atmosphere. SpaceX recovery ship named Megan used a large rig to haul the capsule carrying the astronauts out of the water. Afterwards, the crew was slated to be flown to Ellington Field and finally taken here to nearby Johnson Space Center to eventually be reunited with their families.
The big issue is these two astronauts missed their families.
The astronauts were originally slated to be away from home for an 8-day mission, but had their timeline extended to 9 months. Back here on Earth, their capsule was greeted by dolphins. At the Johnson Space Center, I'm Lee Waldman.
For the recovery teams themselves, we started the day taking a series of helicopters out to the vessel. Oh yeah, Sandra, this view is absolutely unbeatable. So just to kind of finish off what I was saying is once that side hatch of the spacecraft is open, that crew will be assisted out of the capsule one by one.
The distance there between, dolphin cam back again. we can see.
So once securely on.
Welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks.
And there you have it. The side hatch is open for the first time since September. And there we do see Crew 9, some happy waves, smiles all around back on Earth.
Oh, looks like we're getting our next crew member here. That is none other than Sunny Williams. Big smile, big waves. She, like her other crew members, now will be assisted onto the mobility aid.
Good morning, viewers. Hello and welcome to the Morning News Show, where we bring you the latest headlines and insightful stories to kickstart your day.